Welcome back. Today we're diving into something truly special, a car that carries decades of history, character, and nostalgia. Imagine finding a classic car that is almost half a century old but has barely been driven. That's exactly what we're looking at today, a 48-year-old Ford Taunus with only 16,000 kilometers on the clock. Yes, you heard that right. A car built in the late 1970s that has traveled less distance than many modern cars do in just a single year. This is not just a vehicle, it's a time capsule that takes us back to a completely different era of automotive design and engineering. The Ford Taunus was one of the most recognizable family cars produced by Ford Motor Company in Europe. For decades, it served as a practical and reliable sedan for families across the continent. But finding one in this condition today is incredibly rare. Most Taunus models lived hard lives as daily drivers, racking up hundreds of thousands of kilometers over the years. That's why discovering a 48-year-old example with just 16,000 kilometers feels almost unbelievable. Let's first talk about the design because this car instantly transports you back to the late 1970s. The Ford Taunus represents a time when cars were simple, elegant, and built with clean lines rather than aggressive curves. The long hood, rectangular headlights, and wide chrome grille give it a confident but understated presence. Unlike modern vehicles that rely heavily on complex shapes and large air intakes, the Taunus keeps everything straightforward and classy. The front end has that unmistakable vintage charm. The chrome bumper sits proudly below the grille, reflecting light in a way that modern plastic bumpers simply cannot replicate. The headlights are large and rectangular, a popular design trend during that era. Every detail, from the simple indicator lights to the slim chrome trim, shows how designers focused on durability and timeless styling rather than flashy aesthetics. Moving along the side profile, the car looks incredibly balanced. The body lines are straight and clean, and the proportions feel perfectly natural. You'll notice the thin pillars and large windows, something that has almost disappeared in modern cars due to safety regulations and structural reinforcements. These large glass areas give the Taunus excellent visibility and create a bright, airy cabin. The wheels are another reminder of the era this car came from. Instead of massive alloy wheels with low-profile tires, the Taunus sits on modest steel wheels with classic hubcaps. This not only adds to the vintage look but also reflects how cars were designed with practicality and comfort in mind. Now let's talk about the interior, which might be the most fascinating part of this low-mileage example. When you open the door, it genuinely feels like stepping into a brand new car from the late 1970s. Because the car has only driven 16,000 kilometers in nearly 5 decades, the interior has been preserved almost perfectly. The seats still hold their original shape, and the upholstery looks incredibly fresh. In many old cars, the seats are worn, cracked, or faded, but here they appear almost untouched. The dashboard is simple yet charming, featuring large analog gauges that are easy to read. There's a speedometer, fuel gauge, and basic warning lights, nothing overly complicated. One of the most nostalgic features is the steering wheel. It's thin compared to modern steering wheels, but it feels elegant and authentic. Back in the 1970s, driving was a much more mechanical and connected experience, and the steering wheel reflects that philosophy. Another interesting detail is the simplicity of the controls. Instead of large touchscreens or digital displays, you'll find physical knobs and switches for everything. Adjusting the heater, turning on the lights, or controlling the radio requires a simple twist or click. It's incredibly straightforward and surprisingly satisfying. Speaking of the radio, many Taunus models came with classic analog radios, and hearing music through one of these vintage systems is a completely different experience compared to today's digital audio setups. It adds another layer of nostalgia to the driving experience. Now let's move to the heart of the car, the engine. The Ford Taunus was available with several engine options during its production years, typically ranging from small 4-cylinder units to slightly larger inline engines. These engines were not designed to break speed records, but they were known for reliability and ease of maintenance. Under the hood of most late 1970s Taunus models, you would typically find a naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine producing somewhere between 60 and 90 horsepower depending on the variant. That might sound small by today's standards, but remember that this car was designed for smooth and economical driving rather than high performance. The engine is paired with either a manual gearbox or an automatic transmission depending on the configuration. In many cases, enthusiasts prefer the manual version because it provides a more engaging driving experience. Driving a classic car like the Ford Taunus feels completely different from driving a modern vehicle. The suspension is softer, the steering requires more input, and the engine sound is much more noticeable. Instead of being isolated from the road, you actually feel connected to it. Because this particular example has only 16,000 kilometers on the odometer, the mechanical components are likely in outstanding condition. Many collectors search for low-mileage classics because they offer a driving experience that is as close as possible to how the car felt when it was brand new. Another fascinating aspect of this car is its historical significance. During the 1960s, 70s, and early 80s, the Ford Taunus played a major role in European automotive culture. It was practical, affordable, and reliable, making it a popular choice for families. At the time, it competed with vehicles like the Opel Ascona and the Volkswagen Passat. Each of these cars represented the everyday transportation of their era, but the Taunus stood out because of its balance between comfort, reliability, and classic styling. One reason collectors love the Taunus today is its mechanical simplicity. Unlike modern cars filled with complex electronics, the Taunus is relatively easy to maintain. Many parts can still be sourced, and the engine design is straightforward enough that experienced mechanics can repair it without specialized diagnostic tools. This simplicity also means that the driving experience feels more authentic. There are no driver assist systems, no lane-keeping technology, and no digital dashboards. It's just the driver, the road, and a beautifully preserved piece of automotive history. From a collector's perspective, a 48-year-old car with only 16,000 kilometers is incredibly valuable. Mileage plays a huge role in determining the condition and rarity of classic vehicles. Cars that were rarely driven often retain their original paint, interior materials, and mechanical components. If the car has also been stored properly, perhaps in a garage or climate-controlled environment, it becomes even more desirable. Collectors often refer to such vehicles as time capsule cars, because they capture the exact feeling of the era in which they were built. Imagine taking this Ford Taunus out for a drive today. People on the street would instantly notice it because classic cars have a presence that modern vehicles sometimes lack. The chrome details, vintage design, and unmistakable silhouette make it stand out wherever it goes. Driving it would also be a conversation starter. Enthusiasts and older car lovers might approach you to share their memories of owning or riding in a Taunus decades ago. Cars like this are more than transportation, they are pieces of living history that connect generations. Another interesting point is how durable these cars were built to be. In the 1970s, manufacturers focused heavily on mechanical robustness. While modern cars prioritize efficiency, technology, and safety systems, older vehicles often had simpler but tougher engineering. The steel body panels on the Taunus feel solid, and the overall construction reflects an era when cars were built to last many years with proper maintenance. As we reach the end of this journey with the 48-year-old Ford Taunus, it's clear that this car represents much more than just a classic vehicle. It represents a moment in automotive history, a reminder of how cars used to be designed, built, and driven. Finding a classic car with such incredibly low mileage is like discovering a hidden treasure. It allows us to experience the past almost exactly as it was decades ago. Whether you're a collector, an enthusiast, or simply someone who appreciates vintage engineering, a pristine Ford Taunus like this is truly something special. It proves that even after nearly half a century, a well-preserved car can still capture hearts and spark excitement. And honestly, seeing a 48-year-old car with just 16,000 kilometers reminds us that sometimes the most fascinating vehicles aren't the fastest or the newest. Sometimes they're the ones that quietly waited decades to tell their story. Thanks for watching, and if you love rare classic cars like this beautifully preserved Ford Taunus, make sure you stay tuned because there are always more incredible automotive stories waiting to be discovered.